obviously I think it's an important bill.
By what? 9:35. Back to the punishment. How many want to give up? You're ready to give up, aren't you? You're very honest. You just went from a C plus to a D minus. I'm only joking. I have no idea what the names are in here. None. There he goes. Where are you going, Boy Wonder? Where? You can't stay until 9:35. Go ahead, you little juvenile delinquent. I have, how many, you know how many in this class? I have 33 grandchildren. 33. I've got my own precinct. You believe it? 33. We had 9 children, so there they are. Anyway, but they would never give me this much attention. I mean, this is unbelievable. This has to be some kind of a... you guys are doing penance for something, aren't you? Do you want to hear a funny story about... You know, in Ireland there's a little Mount Kilpatrick up in County Mayo. And you go there for penance. And you go up the side of the mountain on your knees. It's a pretty good-sized mountain there. And they go up, and this fellow is going up on his knees for penance, atonement for his sins. And the woman in front of him, she's going up her knees. When the hem of her dress gets caught on the heel of her shoe, and she can't move, and she's trying to move. And she turns to the fellow behind her. She says, "Excuse me, sir," she says, "would you be kind enough to lift me dress?" He says, "I'll do nothing of the sort. It's for doing that I'm doing this." That's not bad. That's not even a venial, for crying out loud. Yes?
Actually, that brings up a question, which is, you know, I grew up waiting for that great political event every year, the St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And all due respect to Senator Hart, I do feel that it has lost something in the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm just wondering whether you think that was just a product of its time, or...
Oh, I don't know. You know, I enjoyed that so much. I did it for 25 years. And even Moakley, whoever was the senator, he does it. But even Moakley knew I was a corny character. And he'd say, "Why don't you come up and do it," you know? And so I did it even before I became the senator, and I was then for 25 years. But I really liked it, and I loved the... but I think you had to be able to relax enough and be bold enough. So some of the humor, you know, because it has to be spontaneity to it. I had a crazy thing. David Broder just died, you know, and just before the first election that Deval Patrick was in, he called me. He said, "Would you like to go to breakfast?" And geez, sure, you know. And he says, "Good." He said, "I'll meet you over at the Four Seasons." I said, "We'll meet at Mull's." You know where Mull's is? Conrevay and Broadway. It's just a little... And he said, "Well, that's fine, you know." So over to Mull's he comes, and we sat down, and I was joking with the guys before Deval Patrick came in. He said, "It's about time we had someone named Patrick as governor of Massachusetts." So you know, now this is you guys have a good sense of humor. Then Broder asked me, he said, who are you with for governor? I said, "I'm with the Irish candidate, Patrick." He has to put it in his column. No, everybody doesn't have the same sense of humor. That remark of mine was in Broder's column. It was on the wall at the Patrick headquarters. I didn't see it, but people told me it was, somebody put it up there. They thought it was good. But I get a group from California, someplace, I don't know, San Diego or somewhere. They want an explanation. I don't know how you explain it. So they call me on the phone. This is true. He says, what's this all about? He says, you live in South Boston. Yeah, oh yeah. And he knows probably a little more about me than I care for him to know. But anyway, he's making allusions to things that are... So he says, do you ever come out this way? And no, I don't go out to California. And He says, well, why not? Or something. You know, he's just real pompous. He's talking for some other people. I said, well, I don't know. I just visit. I only recognize the 13 original colonies. The guy's on the other end of the line. And I said, it's too warm out there. I wouldn't go there. It's too warm. He wants me to visit his club or something. I said, no. I says, it's too warm. I says, if you never come here, how can you know it's too warm? I says, well, you're 3,000 miles from the ocean. he thinks I don't even know there's another ocean. So anyway, but I will say by this time somebody is saying to him, he's putting you on. They actually figured it out. You ever meet any of those people from this way out beyond Worcester? This is way off. You know? So anyway, and I'm not parochial, but whatever. So that's enough of that. Jeez, but no, it's. And I used to love that. Moakley, we were good pals. We lived in the old housing project, 41 Logan Way I was. He was 51 Logan. And Moakley was a good guy. And he was like, he gave me, you know, a lot of, he was avuncular. Is that the word? You know, that's uncle, right? He's only about a few years older, but Joe was, we were buddies for 50 or 60 years. He never came to bar, you know, if I were taking it on the chin, he'd call, we got to go out and have lunch. I says, you're just doing it, you want to show the flag, we're friends. I said, I'm not worrying about any of this stuff, you know. And then at the very end of his life, he called and he said, I just come from the doctor, I'm not going to live, and I just want you to get a few words together for my funeral. That's what he told me, just like that, on the phone. Isn't that just so sad, you know? And at his funeral, at that little church there was George Bush, the second George Bush. It was in 2001, just after the attack on the World Trade Center. But Moakley, just before it. Excuse me. This was just before it. Like in June, and then former President Clinton, everybody came to Moakley's. Moakley was huge in Washington. I used to go down there and sit around with him and bend his ear. I don't know, when I think of it. We'd usually be talking about, I don't know, stuff at ground level, you know. Anyway, what is this? Why am I? Oh, it's because I'm not even in the United States over here. Yes?
How do you envision Boston's future? Do you think it's a bright future for hospitals or schools? It just seems to be vibrant.
Oh, I think it's great. I think we have a great... I think the mayor, by the way, will seek re-election. He doesn't know what the hell else to do with himself. But, you know, I was with him the other night, and it's not a fair question, but we were having a birthday party for Gerard Doherty. He had been a rep in Charlestown, and Bob Quinn was there. Those two guys, when you think of how the world changes, Gerard Doherty and Bob Quinn both were sent as young fellows to TB hospitals. One, a sanatorium out in River Street, you know, out in Mattapan, and Gerard Doherty from Charlestown to, I don't know, Saranac or something. So, but both of them, they were saying they were consumptives. I never even knew the word, but that's what I guess you are when you have TB. It must be penicillin or something that, anyway, because we don't know anybody who, but they actually went and they were like at death's door, the both of them. And they were both, by the way, Doherty's 83 years of age, we're celebrating his birthday, and everyone else in the Senate, the House that year is practically all dead. But the two consumptives were alive, and they were congratulating themselves. But the way that the world changes, you know, it's I don't know. I think though that generally here there's a lot of life to it. All kinds of folks, these businesses. I now, if I were giving advice, I would tell those colleagues of mine, do not go and harangue. Mr. Johnson and his daughter, Abigail, or whatever. If somebody's gone, let them, they have to make up their own minds, you know? I'd be very cautious with that stuff. I said to the mayor, I hope just to encourage the ones who are here. Mr. Johnson used to come by my office from time to time. He said, he says, this measure that you have, I'm just telling you, he says, it's tough on us, he says, and we can go anywhere, and we can take a portion of our business and put it in Omaha, Nebraska, and it doesn't make any, and when I think of it, it wasn't so long ago, but he was explaining something that's fundamentally clear now, and everyone knows that you have this method of communication, and therefore that's a valid point he's making. But he was honest enough to say, I just don't want to be sound as though I'm throwing my weight around here, and so I'm just telling you about it. So I said, I'm going to tell you by this time next week you won't have that to worry about, because I recognize that you have a valid and I can still recall going back to the governor and saying, we're going to lose jobs if we're not careful here. And when the same thing happened with Dennis Picard, who was the head of Raytheon, he would come in and we'd talk about things. I told them I don't want any credit. I said they'll think I'm doing things to ingratiate myself with the business people, but I'm not. I recognize that you've got a good argument, but they would come in and they worked quite well during those seasons. So I don't know. And when the day came that I was going to leave the Senate, this is a little moral question. They called me from the University of Massachusetts. Would you be interested? The board, or somebody called representing the board, James O'Leary, and geez, I never thought of such a thing, and but it sounded interesting, and then I started saying I think I will. I accepted the following day, I think, or the day after that, accepted the offer to be the president, because the president was leaving abruptly, and when a couple of lobbyists called, they said, you can make $1 million because you built political capital. And I really had so help me, I'm just telling you this is, I don't think I have ever explained it before, but I said, I didn't build political capital to use it later. I mean, it wouldn't be long before I'd be doing that deliberately. People would do it deliberately, build political. And then you go out and you, after a year's hiatus or 2 years or something, you can start. Now, I think you could do it legally, but I'd have to really question whether morally you'd be correct if, in fact, you had been doing these public acts and you're going to benefit privately over here for them. And but I did think that it'd be quite all right if I were the president of the university and were using some political capital that was mine, that I had built up in 18 years as president, for the University of Massachusetts. And so I chose to go that route. And I can remember going to see Mr. Picard, and he said things are rough at Raytheon, but, and again, this is the political capital, which I guess I didn't fully comprehend, but he said, but I'm not going to let you walk out of this room empty-handed. And it ultimately meant that the university gets either $5 or $7 million because he gave extra money when people who were alumni of the University of Massachusetts working for Raytheon would give. In the past, they didn't give. They thought they were giving through their tax dollars to the public institution, but the people from Northeastern and MIT, the engineers gave a lot to their alma maters, but nothing for UMass. So he upped the amount that we would, the matching. So he'd like 3 times or something. So the people from, we began to get the habit of alumni giving. But that wouldn't have happened except there was political capital. And when I came, it was a $40 million endowment. And it went to about $140 million by the time I left. Romney didn't want me there anymore, but yes?
I did my undergraduate at UMass Amherst, and I can tell you that you did a wonderful job as president.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that you gave all of us who felt disenfranchised from the power structure in Massachusetts
yeah, thanks.
a sense of belonging.
Oh, you're generous. Thank you very much. God, I'm glad he came here tonight. Geez, would you talk to my wife? Yeah, thank you. Oh, you're generous. Thank you. I appreciate that. Very kind of you. But I mean, so you know that. But you do. I think I was trying to. Since you people are so polite, I'm just telling you. You know, you do think about those things. You say, "Geez, I don't want anything I'm not supposed to have." Anyway, but it's you know, the public service. I had a great old teacher, Carl Thayer. He was a grouch, actually, but he's a Jesuit in BC, and he expect no gratitude for this, but you should do it, and it's worthwhile. That was the word, worthwhile, and it's full, you know. Our friend Socrates had a lot to say about that stuff. You know, instead of doing anything, even for public esteem, or even for money, or whatever, pleasure, anything, these things, they won't satisfy you for much. But, boy, if you can do something you think measures up, so that, you know, it's virtuous, good in and of itself, with no expectation of reward. Boy, and the public service does allow for such things. I mean, I don't want to make a big claim. I mean, I'm very imperfect, dear God. Yeah. I mean, I did battle with everybody. I got more scar tissue than any man in the room. Lots of it. I put a lot on others, too. I liked Weld, you know. We had 5 years together. He ran against me in the first place, Weld. Everything was Bowser this and Bowser that. But then when we came in, you know, he's very bright. And he also had a good sense of humor. And so it really worked very well between him and me during the 5 years we were together. Yes? Who else has a question? Too much about me, geez. This is good. You're a captive audience. You're going to...
What do you think of the Scott Brown election?
Well, I don't think I was among those. I mean, we all knew that it was going that way in advance. My sense of it is this, that they weren't thinking much about Brown at all, but rather with their serious displeasure with things. And this was a fine opportunity to let the world know of their displeasure, the electorate.
The people.
The people, yeah. And they were letting us and letting everyone know that they're quite angry about many things. And he was an opportunity to do that. I don't think they thought much about the Democratic candidate. She had not made much of you know, impression. So he was an opportunity. I don't know how it's going now. You're not asking that question, but I don't know. I guess his stock is very high according to the pollsters and everything. I'll tell you, his best bet is if he can scare off opponents. Is young Kennedy...
They seem to say Joe Kennedy's name recognition would give him an equal standing with him now.
Oh, Joe. Yeah, Joe, I don't know.
I he's running though, but they keep throwing his name up there. I think it'd be a mistake to win the run.
Yeah, I don't think he...
He just don't think he wants it.
I don't think he wants to do it. You know, the other night, Fenway Park, I was there the night that the Sox won that great... The first game.
Their first game, yeah.
Their first win, like after 6 or 7 games. And I was in Bob Quinn's box up there, and Joe Kennedy came to say hi. And the damnedest thing, everybody has a phone, not a phone, but a camera now. And somebody said, will you turn around and get a picture taken? I said, Joe, you're going to be paying hush money for this picture. And there we are. And then somebody else over here, he said, I said, our picture is all over the place. It's as though something was going on. My God. He was just coming over from the next, you know, the boxes. And everybody has a camera now, no matter what you do. It made me think of it. But the other night when he was chatting, you know, it was a little bit about, I don't know, his mother and I were friendly, Ethel Kennedy and all that. But I don't know why. She always was very nice with me. If you get banged around enough out there, you get all kinds of fans too. It's a strange phenomenon. I mean, sometimes people are pretty good that way. Do you know what I mean? They if they think you're getting, you know. Who else? Oh, Bob, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the 1962 Senate election when you were supporting Eddie McCormick?
I was with Eddie McCormick against the rich kid from the Cape, Ted Kennedy. And Ted Kennedy's, they invited me down to Loch Ober's restaurant to see if I might. And I had never been in Loch Ober's. So when I went down to Loch Ober's, Gerard Doherty is a pal of Ted Kennedy's. There are about 8 of us in the room. And Ted is sitting here, Gerard. And somebody told me, so you go to Loch Ober's, order a lobster Savannah. Lobster stuffed with lobster. Everyone else is having a little sissy thing, soup and sandwich, you know. Lobster. I said, I can't come to Loch Ober's without having my lobster Savannah. Out it comes. It looks like a leg of lamb. Bean. I'm eating the lobster Savannah. It's true. And everybody's going around the table, each one saying, oh, I'm going to be with you, Ted, you know. And I said, they get to me. I said, I'm sorry, I'm with the McCormicks. I says, Eddie McCormick's a neighbor of mine. Or something. So. And Gerard Doherty says, could you at least look up, he says, and talk to us for a minute? And Ted Kennedy, to his everlasting credit, says, never mind, he says, we can't afford to feed him. That was my first introduction to Ted. And and then we were at the Democratic Convention, and McCormick was the father of Edward McCormick. He's a bit of a big character. He used to wear a tam. He was with the Yankee division in World War II, and he used to ride this big donkey, and I don't know, on the St. Patrick's Day parade, and he loved to ride it right through Connolly's Tavern. Ram, boom, glasses of beer and everything. He loved all that stuff, but anyway, we're at the Democratic Convention, and it was almost going to be a big. Everybody in our delegation, they were coming over to Naco. Naco was in charge of the delegation, and people would come over and say, well, Mr. McCormick, we get 4 votes for Ted Kennedy, and he said, the whole delegation's voting for my kid. And so over and over again they say, there are 4 votes who want to go for Ted Kennedy. I said the whole delegation's with my kid. Very, very, I said to Naco, I said, this is not going to work. I said, you might as well, because he says, then I said, they're going to challenge the vote, and he says, I got these wire cutters. He's going to cut the wires after he announces the whole delegation's with his kid. And but anyway, Eddie McCormick happily conceded before we get to Suffolk, far enough down the alphabet. We didn't get disgraced or whatever. But that was as close a one as I had come to. And John McCormick, who was the brother of, Naco, but he used to always be telling me, oh, gosh, I worry about it all the time, how he's doing, what's he doing. Naco was a character, He was really, he had a barroom, the Ocean Breeze or something. And then he would be walking behind the bar, I don't know. He's just wearing shorts, And we would sit over and watch strangers come up from the beach. And we could just tell they were brand new. And they would be easing up to the bar saying, what the hell is this guy wearing? Because he had no top on or anything. And Naco was a big fat guy walking back and forth, pouring beer and everything. But he was the brother of the Speaker and the father of Edward, who became Attorney General, and also ran against young Senator Kennedy. I still remember the day. Does everybody remember that contest where Ed McCormick said to, if your name were Edward Moore, and he gave him a hard time at South Boston High, and I still remember thinking that McCormick seems to be doing okay. And when I went into my house that night, my mother said, she says, your friend McCormick sounded like just a cheap South Boston politician. Oh, I knew then that he had to be. I mean, if my mother was telling me, what the hell did they think him way off in someplace like Saugus? Any other foreign place, I guess for us, beyond Dedham lies the West. Anyway, hey, I can remember going to BC, and I wanted to. I was invited to speak, and the reason I wanted to speak about Curly, I did. I wrote a little essay, and I wrote about, And because the kids in the class, they didn't like him. I knew they come from places like Dedham, Stoneham, West Roxbury. We didn't like people from West Roxbury because they were all fancy Dan, you know, and so they would vote wrong. I really, you know, why am I doing this? This is just an exercise. You're not learning anything. You're learning what a miracle it is the government works with the likes of me. That's not good. Yes?
I wonder if you could share your recollections from the busing crisis back in the 70s.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, the busing...
Legacy was,
What?
what do you think its legacy was for the city?
Well, okay, it's a good question because it was the thorniest of controversies. I think the governor, once again, was a judicial fiat, came from Judge W. Arthur Garrity. I think it was so clearly a mistake, however well-intentioned he was, and however much its proponents saw it as a continuation of, you know, the civil rights struggle. I think it was just so ill-advised that, and for a few things about it. The student population was in the city of Boston was about 94,000 students. I think 40% of which students were non-white. And he was seeking to have, as he said, racial balance or something. And there were a little bit about definitions. They called it desegregation. My sense of that would be the undoing of segregative acts. And wherever there were segregative acts, they should have been disallowed and, you know, order somebody held in contempt if in fact they persisted. But he didn't do that. He took a plan that had no relation to whatever his findings were, and he had this broad plan, the judge did. And I still recall just telling even Ted Kennedy and everybody, you know, it's going to be counterproductive. People are going to leave. They're going to march out of here by the thousands when they realize that they cannot win. And they did. The student population went from 94,000, I think, to 55,000, about 40,000 drop, and all whites. They all just fled. And one time I talked to Dr. James Coleman, who was the fellow who had come up with the idea of this sort of method of integration or something. And he had changed his mind by then. And I said, you know, my constituents, I said, they take it on the chin. I said, they have some sort of a natural right over their children, and they ought to be able to, as long as it isn't interfering with other people's rights, then, I didn't think it did, they should feel comfortable remaining here in the city. He said, your constituents have done nothing wrong. He said, the most segregative act, if you're looking for someone to punish for segregative act, is the choice of the racial isolation of suburbia. So and by the way, it's not really a segregative act. It's not intended as such, but its result is is segregative because you go there where other people have not been able to go. And my own sense of it was, my own children were in the public schools. The black children were in almost all the schools. There was one place they were not, so Boston High, because it was so crowded there that some of the classes were down in the L Street bathhouse on the beach. So, I mean, it was just a mob there. So, and the people there, I knew they just didn't want their children uprooted. They were in school with black children. It wasn't a problem at all. It was, and once they thought that they were losing all their rights over their children, they just picked up and left. It's tough to be a parent and worrying about the education of your children. You take that very seriously. And he, the judge, seemed to be unmindful of that. The people talk about the proponents. I never met a person who was affected by it who was a proponent of it. There may have been such a person, but I never met that person. On the other hand, lots of proponents were in the unaffected suburbs. And one of the strangest things was throughout the people who would be the most impatient and angry with those of us who said it was not going to work and we shouldn't do it, they were the most removed. Even relatives of mine, good people, they had this notion that this was the only way you could help disadvantaged black people. They would tell you in some way or another that they didn't think you should be opposed to it. And but I did never argue about it, because again, they were unaffected proponents. And inside the city, people would say, gee, let's see if we can just not talk about it today. And so-and-so's leaving, this one's leaving, all sorts of people would be leaving. And as I say, 40,000. And so the schools went from 40% non-white to about 90%, I guess, non-white. And so it failed in its stated purpose. He really didn't have to do what he did, the judge. And he would talk as though he were totally out of touch. But he'd say things like, we're going to have to tough this out. And he's riding back out to Wellesley every night, you know. Ever been to Wellesley? Neither have I. So, I mean, you know, it was just, I think it was just a mistake. And, but people, I must say, they're resilient. They get back. I remember a little girl, my own daughter, I don't want to use the kids as examples, but she was at the Andrews School, and she came home and she said, this child who was going to school with her, a black child, said she wasn't coming back tomorrow because there was so much hostility and the rest. And she was there in the school, she was doing fine, but now all of these, they're pitted against each other. And she was fearful, and so she didn't come back. And so, yeah, I don't know, it's just, I think it was just a mistake. You know, there's something to be said about, I mean, judges. The judges, Haywood Broun one time, he was criticizing the Supreme Court of the United States. He said they should get up every now and then and go over and look out the window. There's something to be said about that. They're not even allowed, judges, to go out and, you know, mingle with everybody. There's like a prohibition against it for fear they might be contaminated by the rest of us, and so their objectivity might be threatened. And I don't think that he ever understood it, W. Arthur Garrity. I don't know. I don't know. I remember telling Ted Kennedy, we were in a small aircraft coming from like Springfield on some other matter, and we were coming to Boston. And I said, you know, I said, Dr. Coleman says that the choice of the racial isolation, I was fresh about it, you know. I said maybe places like Wellesley, because he was friendly with W. Arthur Garrity, or Hyannisport. Subtle, you know, like a train wreck, you know. And I'm giving him, and I said maybe there's a guilt feeling and that people have to do something, but they ought to do something themselves, because they're positively setting people against each other who should not be. It was a strange thing. Throughout, I would speak against it, when, you know, but I didn't go looking for an opportunity to do so, because I knew the judge didn't want to hear it. He's the only place where something could happen. But it was a strange reality that I would campaign in Roxbury or wherever I had to, the Cathedral Project in West South End, places like that, and there'd be hardly a murmur of discontent about it from the constituency. I was there. I don't know. They knew I had a different point of view, I guess, but they didn't get on the subject. And the only place I'd get a hard time, and I think this is indicative, would be from people who were unaffected and rabid proponents in the suburbs. But on the ground in the city wasn't so bad. I don't know. Yes.
Still busing today.
Yeah. Yeah.
They should go back to the regular school, neighborhood school district.
I think, you know, what we should have done, I just the opposite of that. At the time, we should make it very clear to anybody, any black parent, that their child should be able to go to school in any place in the city. And it should be also the same for the others. So if the parents in Roxbury wanted to do so, we'd find the way to get them to another school and the way to accommodate them when they got there. That was the way we should have been doing it. Maximum free choice. Because everybody cares deeply about free choice. They love the idea for themselves, you know. So, I mean, everybody has money, they get up and left. We should not have driven them out by the thousands, you know. And, yes.
Let me ask you, though, do you think that the black community had legitimate concerns about the quality of the education?
I think there was, yeah. Sad to say, yeah. By the way, the judge, I remember reading this 100 years ago, but there were instances, too, of, I'd say, a segregative action where somebody's assigned on the basis of skin color. That should not have been. But the way I think they should have done it was, you know, a desegregative order would have said, don't do this. Anyone who does this, you're going to be here, held accountable by me. It's a segregative act, and we're not going to allow it. We should have done that. Also, you're right. Well, the question at least implies there was a sense that in the black schools they weren't being given the same services or something like that, and that should have been corrected. But they never should have frightened tens of thousands of people out of this. They would have had a much more integrated school system. They were in all my, I didn't make a count of it, but in the Perry School in South Boston, the kids were at the Andrews School, and then the judge ordered that school closed down. It was one of the best schools. I went there myself and a couple of my kids. And John McCormick, I remember they used to have the auditorium was at the top of the school, and John was old by then. The two of us I was helping him, and he going up, because we were both alumni of the Andrews School. We were very proud of that. It was a great school. The building was old, you know, John A. Andrews, governor in Civil War, and it's at the Andrews School. And then the judge closed it. And I still remember the people standing across the street saying, oh, God, what are we going to do? We're going to lose the Andrews School. But he thought he should do things punitive and so on. He lost all focus. And he didn't speak to us. He wouldn't speak to us. And Ted Kennedy told me one time, he says, when your name comes up on Judge Garrity's session, the air turns blue. That's what he told me. I was talking about him to anybody who has the name W. Arthur Garrity, you know. I was joking. Anybody uses his first initial and middle name, you know, that stuff. Who's he think he is, you know? J. Throckmorton, somebody or something. The fresh stuff. I was, you know, I'm no day at the beach myself, you know. I know that, but the Judge Garrity was an easy mark, you know, and he was, he was just hopeless. I knew him before he was on the bench, you know. Dumb as a doornail. He really was. The poor guy. And Ted loved him. But anyway, I mean, he was Jack Kennedy's choice. So anyway, he was with a firm, McGuire, Roach and Lean. I used to know him from there. But he was just totally out of touch. It's the worst thing, you know, representative democracy, and then you allow a judge. The judges should only be in judicial things, not broad matters like that. Never. They're just, because they're unapproachable. You have to talk to them up over on a bench. It's just crazy. He just had no idea, you know. He had experts. That's what he did, experts. They'd be coming from colleges, BU, BC, Harvard. What are you going to get? I ask you, my fellow Democrats, what are you going to get? The likes of what you are? No. But experts. Oh, gosh. You know, I think it's one of the reasons I like, Menino, to his credit, I'm not a big, but the guy, he loves the thing at ground level. And I think he does a good job in that way. He's touchy, I'm being tough on him now, but he's very easily offended and everything, but nevertheless, he's ubiquitous. That's a nice big word. But he's everywhere. He goes, I think there's a little bit, I may be wrong, this is really, I don't want to endow them with any, but a Curley, Menino has the quality, I think. There are lots of people who have a little bit of that, I'm going to get pious for a second, but you know that beautiful St. Matthew's gospel, you know, the guy gets to heaven and, you know, God says to him, well, you gave me to drink when I was thirsty, you gave me to eat when I... What the hell are you talking about? I never saw you before in my life. You know what I mean? Well, whenever you did it for the least of these, you did it for me. Like Gretchen there, she's helping people who are wrongfully accused. Why? Well, because you want to do something for somebody who can't do anything at all for you. It seems like a much purer... and that's a quality I think I used to find in people in public life from time to time. And so, I don't know if that's the end of my speech. I like the idea of people being elected. It's messier and the rest. Judges, they should stay in the courtroom. As a matter of fact, they should not stay in the courtroom. They should just go home. Leave us all alone. Judges, anyway. You people are the best crowd. You must be getting some kind of penitential break for this. Like,
We actually had to pay.
what? You had to pay. You had to pay. Oh yeah. You pay, all right. Bob, I've done. I don't know.
You're doing great. Can you tell us how you wound up going to BC High?
Very briefly. I was telling. I was down at St. Monica's. One guy's on one side of me, Joe Quirk. He goes to Boston Latin School, talking about Latin School and his home lessons. And over here, Walter Clifford, BC High. They're talking. I was at the Hart School. I never did anything. I never brought a book home. I never did it. And I'm going to go into my second year of high, 10th grade, at South Boston High the following year. Someplace, the idea came, geez, I've got to go to someplace and do something with my life. So I went over to BC High, all on my own. My mother didn't know what the heck I was talking about. And I asked the fellow who was behind the desk. He turned out to be the treasurer of the school. His name was Doherty. And I wrote about him in my political memoir. And I said to him, if I went back a year and began my freshman year here at BC High, would you people take me in? I thought I was going to have to go before some tribunal or something. He says, oh yeah, definitely. That was it. I went home. I applied. $150 a year. $37.50 a quarter. Big dough. 37, and my sister Jean helped me to pay, and I went through the school, and then when I, forgive me for, but you've asked the question, and at the end in 1952, I was graduating, and an old Jesuit priest called me up, and he says, why haven't you applied to go to college? And I said, well, I don't know. I knew BC was $450 a year. These Jesuits are not going to gouge my parents. Try to get $450 from them, you know? And so I said, no. I said, I'm going to do something else or something. And he says, what are you going to do? I said, maybe I'll go in the Army. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just wasn't going to go to BC because it cost $450. He says, why don't you let us pay for it for this year, and then you can do whatever you want to do. And I went for 1 year on the Jesuits. And then at the end of it, I went in the Army, put my name up in the draft, and then I come out after 2 years, and I had the GI Bill. So I was very fortunate. And not many people from the Old Harbor Housing Project, you know. I remember Old Harbor Housing Project. This is true. I was at a hearing. The lady, she's up there, and she said, I work with people in the housing developments in the city, Mr. Chairman. She says, lower socioeconomic. I says, I know the type. They play it over and over again on Channel 2. Oh, I know the type. Everybody in South Boston having a big laugh, you know. I know the type, yeah. Ah, jeez. It was good. My campaign treasurer was John Sullivan. Sullivan has a tavern in South Boston. It's still there. He still works at the tavern. One night, I had told him over and over again, do not answer questions. Do not answer questions about my campaign, because they're always looking to trip us up. Doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you don't want to get banged around by these guys. Men of unsleeping malevolence. Well, one night, in they come. Klieg lights on John, Channel 2. John says, hey, what's this? He's behind the bar. What's this? He says, the woman says, I'm over here from Channel 2. I'd like to ask you some questions about Senator Bowser's campaign expenditures. Ho, 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 says John. If there's one thing I never answer, it's questions. Over and over again. And there's John saying, if there's one thing I never answer, it's questions. It was brilliant. I mean, it was brilliant. It was my campaign thing. And I always remember John, he was instructed not to answer questions. And as soon as they said the word questions, bingo. He knew that's one thing he never answers is questions. But, I don't know. People say, to what do you owe your longevity? St. Augustine Cemetery. Always just enough votes at St. Augustine Cemetery. There's a tombstone there. It says, as I am now, soon you shall be. Are you prepared to follow me? And little Denny Galvin, who works there, writes in big chalk letters, to follow you, I'm not content, till I find out which way you went. And, I always tell about the fellow who's from the election commissioner's office. He says, how come there are 327 people registered to vote out of that three-decker? I says, because the top floor is empty. It's a joke, it's a joke, it's a joke. I shouldn't joke like that. You have to tell you how a good fellow I am. And then, but no, we would have everybody registered. And then in the back bay, there'd be some kind of a big complaint. Very few voted over there, very, very few. And so I used to say, let them sleep. No sound trucks, no nothing, Got an election? I don't know. But, yeah. And, but we'd roll out like 1,400 votes in a precinct. And they'd have like 17 votes. I don't know. Thank you so much. My name is Flynn, Ray Flynn. Forget it. Okay. Oh, it's good to see you. Thanks a lot. Nice to see you. Thanks for your patience.
Graduated from UMass.
You did?
Yeah, right when you retired.
Really? Oh my gosh, yeah, it's nice to see you. I saw you sitting up there. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Great. Were you local? Are you?
Yeah, my dad's from JP. I grew up on the Cape.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
it's nice to see you. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Good to see you kept it to humor.
Oh, yeah, you bet. And thanks a lot for your... Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to see you. You're very patient. You poor kid.
I was trying, but you didn't let me. I was trying to leave.
You were trying to leave?
But you didn't let me.
I didn't allow you.
I enjoyed it.
You have to suffer these things